Ask any guy in the gym whose physique they admire most in the history of bodybuilding, and 9 times out of 10 they'll say Frank Zane. He is an iconic shape, incredibly lean and perfectly balanced with clean, beautiful lines. Thousands have entered into the sport with aspirations of approaching the corporeal perfection Zane possessed in his heyday. He owned a physique that won him such titles as Mr. America, Mr. Universe, and Mr. Olympia several times over. And Zane has often made revelations about what it was like in that golden era with Arnold Schwarzenegger as a training partner, friend, and worthy onstage adversary. Today, we dive into the same. A star is built. In 1965, Frank Zane won his first major bodybuilding title when he competed in the IFBB medium-height Mr. Universe competition. Far from a flash in the pan, his Mr. Universe title kick-started a string of latter success. Living with his wife and fellow bodybuilder Christine Zane in California, both Zanes amassed a series of bodybuilding titles during the latter half of the 1960s. In Frank's case, his Mr. Universe title was followed by first-place finishes in the Mr. America middle height division for 1966 and 67. In 1968, Zane won both the Mr. Universe and Mr. America titles.
My best shape up to that point, such good shape, it took 40 years for this to happen, but greatest bodybuilder ever award.
While the Mr. Olympia contest is now the Super Bowl of the sport, the Mr. Universe and Mr. America competitions were highly regarded and greatly sought-after titles during the 1960s. His 1968 victories were more significant than many at the time would have guessed. One of Zane's opponents at the Mr. Universe competition was Arnold Schwarzenegger. This makes Zane one of the few individuals to beat Arnold in a bodybuilding contest. Arnold had recently come to America to work with Joe Weider, the founder of the Mr. Olympia contest and trainer of champions. There was just one problem. Schwarzenegger's muscularity was, even then, beyond doubt. Unfortunately, he lacked the definition needed to compete with someone like Zane. Despite being 50 pounds heavier, Arnold finished behind the much leaner and better proportioned Frank Zane. Arnold was so angry about his second-place finish that he called Zane a chicken with 17-inch arms. When his anger subsided, Arnold understood the importance of being lean and muscular, a combination that Zane had already begun to perfect.
I know Arnold took it very hard. I lost Mr. Universe to a chicken with 17-inch arms.
How they met. Frank Zane met Arnold Schwarzenegger at the 1968 Mr. Universe competition. Zane had won Mr. America the previous week, and the promoters talked him into coming to the Universe. And there was Arnold, white and big and bulky with no legs, wearing white sneakers, seersucker pants, and a Hawaiian shirt. Frank Zane was in shape, had a good tan, and was cut, so he beat him and won that show pretty easily. He was one of the only guys ever to beat him in competition, and that show was his to win. Right after the Universe, Zane went to California for a photo shoot and stayed with Arnold in his apartment, sleeping on a cot for 2 weeks. They trained at Gold's in Venice, which was brand new, a big bright space full of new equipment and serious competitive guys. They'd get up, eat, go to the gym, eat, go to the beach, shoot, eat, go to the gym, eat, go to sleep, and they thought, this is the life. Zane was getting into really great shape and realized that California was where he needed to be. He relocated soon afterward. Once settled in Cali, they all trained together, Zane, Arnold, Franco Columbu, and Dave Draper too. They were all part of the circle. Zane worked as a math teacher, so during the year he trained in the afternoons with everyone, but over the summers he would do 2-a-days, morning and evening. In 1970, Arnold and Zane trained together intensely for the NABBA Mr. Universe in London. Winning that show was a big feather in your cap in those days, so they wanted to capture those titles. What was that training like? Their regimen was very focused, which Zane loved, because that was how he'd train alone for so many years. The workouts were very well paced without much rest between sets, a high-intensity volume training system with a 3-way split routine 6 days a week, chest and back on Mondays and Thursdays, legs on Tuesdays and Fridays, and delts and arms on Wednesdays and Saturdays with Sundays off. It was grueling, but it worked remarkably well. They got into really great shape, and Arnold won the Pro Mr. Universe and Zane won the Amateur. What they mean? Volume training. They did lots of sets. Lots. For example, they did full squats going well below parallel on leg day. They started with 135 pounds, went up to 185, then 225, 285, 315, 365, and 405. For each set, Zane did 10 reps, Arnold only did 8. Zane was better at squatting because he had shorter legs than Arnold did. So if you're doing the math, that's 70 squats per workout, 140 per week, using heavy weight. Brutal. Advanced training techniques. They didn't go to failure a lot. Sometimes they'd do forced reps before a contest to push past a peak, but mostly they'd pyramid up for 6 to 7 sets. Surprisingly, Arnold didn't use very heavy weights for a guy his size, but his form was great and he really knew how to isolate his muscles. He'd do curls with only 35-pound dumbbells, but because his form was so great and he'd squeeze each and every repetition, he got great results. Lessons from Arnold about training. Both of the guys learned a lot from each other. For example, Arnold showed Zane how to get a biceps peak by supinating his wrist as he curled the weight. In return, Zane showed him how to develop triceps by introducing him to the one-arm dumbbell triceps extension, which he'd never done before training with Zane.
Other ones like rowing, he was very strong. Some of the exercises, like on squatting, I use the same weight as him, and like incline.
Posing together. They used to have mini posing clinics, Zane, Arnold, and Franco, in Arnold's apartment, and they'd critique each other. Later, when Arnold retired, they'd go to him and pose, and he'd tell them every little aspect they needed to work on. Once in 1977, Robbie Robinson, Boyer Coe, and Zane went to Arnold before a competition and posed, and he said, "Tonight, Frank, you would have been third. You lost your balance 3 times, your foot placed was too far forward, and you need to twist a bit more to the side for this." He shared all this stuff in incredible detail that could make or break a routine. He was one of the best posing coaches ever, and Frank Zane has confessed to that himself.
And we helped each other. You know, that's where even at the contests, we would help each other.
Hanging out socially. The two would hand out socially all the time. They'd go to Tijuana and buy souvenirs or practice archery at the local high school. It was funny because Arnold would always hit the very first arrow right in the center of the target, but after that he could never hit the center again. Zane had been shooting a long time, so he would beat him regularly. Zane could also beat him pretty handily at bowling. Zane liked to do activities with Arnold that he could beat him at, like all good friends. 5 little-known facts about Frank Zane. He is a master archer. He plays the harmonica and the guitar, sings, and makes his own flutes out of bamboo. He once bought a used BMW of Arnold's for $2,200. His first job was setting up pins in a bowling alley at age 15. He wrote and performed a song for Arnold at the Arnold Classic. In my life, been fortunate enough to know Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's no bluff. Training with him, best workout partner ever had, showed me how he'd win, and for that I am glad. Before a contest, my biggest thrill, I think, was showing him my posing and watching him blink. He'd say, "Wow, you're really looking fine. Now do that vacuum pose one more time." That's all for this video, folks. See you another time.